Hey my watchers, welcome. Today we are gonna see. What if Hermione madly fallen for Draco? Join Patreon for early access exclusive content of Super Op stories. Also contents that's too far for YouTube. You will get 400 content there, please do check that too. Please subscribe this channel, because definitely I will try my best to provide a valuable content for you all. Also check the description to support the original author for this beautiful creation. Hermione didn't regret her decision to help Professor Snape brew potions for the hospital wing. No matter what Ron or Harry might say, there was an unspoken agreement between the potions master and his newt classes that anyone deemed competent enough should assist him in any way they could. And for Hermione, that meant brewing calming drafts, packaging them and taking them to Madame Pomfrey. One Friday evening, the day before the upcoming Quidditch between Gryffindor and Slytherin, Hermione had just finished a new batch and, after receiving Snape's approval, headed up the stairs to Madame Pomfrey's domain, hoping to discuss healing courses if the matron was free. Which, as luck would have it, she wasn't. The nurse was bending over a boy with familiar blonde hair, threatening to force-feed him a potion if he would not let her help him drink it. "I will not be helped by you, woman," the boy yelled, and all of a sudden, Hermione realized who it was. Draco Malfoy. Madame Pomfrey saw her at the same time. "Ah, Miss Granger, please could you order the drafts in my office?" the older woman said kindly, and then returned her attention to the struggling Slytherin, who was clearly abashed to be seen in the hospital wing by his archenemy, and a mudblood to boot. Who knows what she could do with the information? "Now, Mr. Malfoy, drink up." Hermione rushed into the office, intent on stacking the potions as quickly as possible so that she could leave before Malfoy began insulting her. However, Madame Pomfrey entered just a few minutes later, muttered about insolence and such like. "That boy," she hissed, "is hopeless. If he thinks he's escaping from my care when Professor Snape got him up here for me to check on him." "Professor Snape brought him?" Hermione asked, incredulous to find that Professor Snape was actually half-decent to his students. The nurse turned to her. "He was in a right state." She spoke lowly, in the kind of voice that implies gossip in every syllable. "Professor Snape was basically carrying him. He looked dead. That's how exhausted he was. I'm trying to give some dreamless sleep, but he won't have it. I don't know quite what to do. Despite all my threats, I can't force him to take it. I'm legally bound, you see. Perhaps I should try?" Hermione questioned, surprised when the words came out of her mouth. "I mean," she said weakly as the matron gave her a searching look, "he might calm down? I suppose it wouldn't hurt to try." Madame Pomfrey answered grimly, taking off her apron and throwing it down. "I don't want to hear any arguing. Mind," she added sharply, giving the girl a tiny bottle. Hermione re-entered the ward, discomfort to find the Slytherin watching her as she approached him. "Malfoy," she greeted, sitting in the chair that Madame Pomfrey had recently vacated. "Granger," replied he, his voice laced with fatigue. Dark rings made half-moons below his eyes and he was paler than usual. "Why are you here?" she questioned suddenly. He eyed her nervously. "I mean, in the hospital wing. You're never ill." "I mean, neither am I, so I've noticed that you're not." "Oh, that makes no sense." He held up a hand, albeit a trembling one, for silence. "Stop babbling, Granger. Professor Snape deemed it necessary for me to stay overnight as Blaise has been to him about my unorthodox sleep patterns." "Nightmares?" Hermione queried. The look he gave her was more than enough in reply. "I have them too." Now he looked simply confused. "Last summer, at the ministry." The veil that Sirius fell through, she felt that she could say these things to Malfoy, although if Harry was right and he was, "I've never wanted to listen to you up until now," Draco answered. And it was harsh, but it was true. "Perhaps we are more similar than we thought, Granger." "What do you dream of?" Hermione whispered. "Death," returned Draco, his lips dry. Startled, Hermione leaned forwards. "But why?" She was unsure of whether she would get an explanation. To be or not to be is the eternal question, Granger, but there is never an answer. She enjoyed hearing him talk. Hermione suddenly realized that, other than their occasionally verbal battles in the hallways, Draco rarely spoke. "When did you get so mysterious and knowledgeable?" Hermione was stunned by the Muggle reference. Through William Shakespeare, Draco laughed, but it was an ugly, tired sound and Professor Snape. "He's my godfather," he explained. "Of course." Hermione slapped her forehead. "That solves all the favoritism. I think it's high time you were asleep," she patronized. "Will you be a good boy and take your medicine? Otherwise, I will sing you a nursery rhyme." Hermione smiled, and it was not a nice one. All right, he huffed. "But I can drink it on my own." "Of course," Hermione said, and handed the vial to Draco. "I just wanted to say, thank you," Draco spoke awkwardly, "for keeping me company on a night like this." Hermione wanted to ask, "A night like this?" But she knew Draco wouldn't respond, and her soft, brown eyes were the last thing he saw. "Rock-a-bye, baby in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. Baby is drowsing, cozy and fair. Mother sits near, in her rocking chair. Forward and back, the cradle she swings, and though baby sleeps, he hears what she sings. Payback on Ron." Hermione decided that she hated Ron. Not for any logical reason she could discern, but just for reasons. And that was why she had set a potentially harmful charm on him. A puño wasn't the most lethal of things she could have come up with in the space of time it took to walk from the desk to the doorway. However, she knew it would definitely leave him with scratches at the very least. Scratches that his dear Lavlav would be able to see every day of their budding relationship. She loved being vindictive, and that was why she went to visit the biggest Weasley hater in the school in the hopes he could cheer her up. Malfoy was still in the infirmary. Hermione had checked. It seemed that Professor Snape still wanted to keep a watchful eye on him, and possibly make sure he wasn't off to curse another student. "Do you have time for a bit of Weasley mockery?" It was a childish question, but Hermione was feeling particularly petulant at this point in time. Of course, came the reply. "What did you have in mind?" "Well," Hermione begun, "he's being a cocky little git right now, and I wanted to tell someone who also hates him. He managed to not make a fool of himself during Quidditch, and then he decided, let's be stupid enough to make out with Lavender Brown of all people. I thought he was vaguely proficient enough to not do something as idiotic as that." She was warming to her theme. "He's an idiot, pure and simple. And right now I hate him. Personally, I always knew he was not vaguely proficient enough to avoid Brown like the plague," came the voice under the covers. "But if you say so, I also descended to his level and set a flock of birds on him." The covers quivered with laughter and did not stop for a full 5 minutes. Madame Pomfrey eventually exited her office and told Hermione in her most patronizing voice that it was indeed past curfew. This did not stop a loud guffaw following Hermione all the way out of the hospital wing. Given that Hermione was not speaking to one, as she now called him, things were much better. She had little rants to Malfoy every evening, and was rewarded with what little bits of information he knew. "Brown once attended a dinner party of my parents," Malfoy divulged. "She proved to be a complete disgrace, displaying her embarrassing talent for knowing absolutely nothing about anything. After the dinner, both my mother and my father came up to me separately and said if I ever fell in love with Lavender Brown, I would be attending my wedding in carefully selected pieces." "Charming," commented Hermione. Malfoy's parents never ceased to amaze her in their quest to alienate their son and be absolute sadists to the entire world. "I know," Malfoy replied, "but at least I know how they feel about her. They were honest, and honesty is a virtue." Hermione had had many weeks to review her blackmail material. Of course, this was Malfoy's plan, and would obviously not work. Despite this, Hermione decided that she couldn't care less and thought she would go along with the plan, if only to have a bit of fun for the first time in a while. She was going to blackmail Lavender Brown into breaking up with Ron in the most public way possible. "Lavender?" she asked sweetly. "Could I have a word with you?" Lavender blinked. "Yes." "Brilliant." Hermione hauled Lavender away in a style reminiscent of Rita Skeeter. Hermione frowned, deep in concentration. She never thought it would be so hard to perform the confundus charm on such a stupid human being. Cormac McLaggen had been easy at the Quidditch trials. "You will suggest to Ron Weasley in the Gryffindor common room that he is spending too much time with me. When he denies this, tell him, whilst crying and wailing, that you are breaking up with him as he is obviously too involved in me." Then slap him hard and run away crying to be comforted by your new friend. Me. Lavender made no response, but Hermione could only hope it had worked. The night of the action was soon upon them. Ron and Lavender turned up in the common room as planned, and Hermione was not far from them. Lavender followed her instructions perfectly. I think you're spending too much time with Hermione Granger. This statement was said overly loudly, and many heads turned. Hermione pretended to blush, but really, she couldn't care less. I'm not. Ron protested. You are. Lavender accused. You keep ditching me just to hang around with Harry Potter and Granger more. What do you see in her? This was getting even more dramatic as it went along. Hermione could only guess that Lavender's true nature was making everything even more over the top. Lav, I promise I'm not. I'm breaking up with you. You're clearly too involved with her. What? Oh, and by the way, she hates you. Ooh, harsh. True, though. Slap. Hermione. Lavender fought her way over to the astonished girl. She hadn't expected it to work. She didn't respond at first when Lavender put her arm round her. Then she came to her senses. Let's find Parvati, Hermione said sensibly, and tell him what a prat Ronald Weasley can be. Sounds good, replied Lavender, already over her 16th boyfriend. I mean, what a prat. Yep, Hermione answered, mine somewhere else. What an idiot. By the way, this wasn't meant to get so AU. I just started writing and decided Draco was better as a vindictive, handsome, funny guy hiding under the covers in the hospital wing. Also, so that everyone's clear, Lavender has a very clear list of boyfriends. The only reason she's on her 16th is this. Draco Malfoy hates her, as evidenced by the mentioned dinner party. Neville Longbottom is pathetic. Harry Potter is someone she's working up to. There are 20 boys in the year if there are 5 boys in each house. She's moving on to Dean Thomas next. Loopy Lavender. This chapter is for Slytherin Princess S&M, who wanted me to update. Here it is in 2 days as promised. You may find that the title and the description of this story has changed. I decided it was more of a comedy than a romance. Sorry to those Dramione shippers. However, you will still see plenty of Draco and Hermione, and you never know. Hermione wanted to get away from Lavender. Desperately. But for some annoying reason, most likely pertaining to a Slytherin currently residing in the hospital wing, the Confundus charm was not wearing off. And Parvati had noticed. She may not be her wise, Ravenclaw sister, but she still had some existing brains, however hard this may be for Hermione to accept. Hermione! The Gryffindor twin hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her away from her intended destination. Charms. Parvati. Hermione replied equally violently. What's wrong with Lavender? The girl demanded. I think she's lost a few brain cells, Hermione answered honestly. It was quite hard to confound her, and now she's gone a bit too far around the bend. She's going loopy? Parvati whispered, shocked. Hermione didn't know why she was so surprised. Lavender was currently wandering down the corridor, singing at the top of her voice and sporting a Hufflepuff banner. Well, yes, Hermione admitted. But I'll fix her. Don't worry, she added, and then blanched at her own words. I'll sort her out, she finished kindly. After I've consorted with my extremely sadistic Slytherin ally, she muttered under her breath as Parvati rushed off to rescue Lavender from the snatches of many welcoming Hufflepuffs, particularly boys. Hermione was pleased to see her friend being sensible for once. Draco Malfoy, Hermione called, sounding identical Professor McGonagall when angry. Draco, sensing rather than seeing the Gryffindor's fury, burrowed deep down beneath the covers. Came a muffled reply. You are in dire need of someone to come and save your sorry soul as you will. Most certainly. Not be sane by the time I've finished with you. Then Hermione smiled evilly, as Draco's tousled hair emerged from beneath the duvet. Really? Draco drawled, hoping to pretend Granger's words hadn't intimidated him. He wasn't intimidated, of course not. He was a Malfoy, a Slytherin. He would defy adversity. And curly-haired mudbloods. You wouldn't happen to know why Lavlav Brown has started singing down corridors, would you? Draco blushed and squirmed, hoping Hermione hadn't noticed. Is she? Yes. Then, I suspect you overdid the Confundus charm. Overdid? My foot. Please, Granger, don't make me imagine your foot, Draco cried, disgusted. Then reverse whatever dark spell you've put on her. There was a pause. Hermione coughed, embarrassed. Draco's face was stony. That's not what I meant. Kind of jumped out. She waited for his reaction. I can tell. His tone was icy. So you assume, like all the other jumped-up Gryffindors, that we Slytherins are always using dark spells? I think you should speak to Professor Snape. The conversation had taken an unexpected turn. Hermione blinked. And why's that? He can tell you things which will immediately change your petty ideals. You will no longer be proud to be part of the Red and Gold House. Now, leave me be. If you want to raise yourself higher than a mudblood, speak to Severus. If not, leave now and never return. Hermione felt tears prick at her eyes. So that's what you really think? She demanded. You know what, I will speak to Professor Snape. Malfoy seemed satisfied. And tell him what a narcissistic bastard his godson really is. Greasy git of the dungeons. Suddenly there came a knock at his door. He looked up in surprise. Generally it was only Minerva, Albus, Poppy or Draco who came to visit him, and Minerva used the flu. Albus simply operat in headmaster's privileges. Poppy barged through the door and Draco waited pensively outside for at least 10 minutes before the wards accepted his magical signature and allowed his entrance. This had to be someone else. Possibly a student or maybe Aurora. God, that would be awkward. Come in, he called. And in walked the one person he had not expected to see. A certain know-it-all, bushy-haired, buck-toothed Gryffindor who went by the name of Hermione Granger. Good evening, Professor, Hermione said smoothly. Snape raised an eyebrow. It's past curfew, Miss Granger, he drawled. But he was curious and therefore desisted from taking points. I had something urgent to see you about. Snape gestured for her to continue. You see, I've been getting to know your godson a bit better recently, and he tells me the only way I'll understand how horrible Gryffindor is as a house is if you tell me. Also, he's a narcissistic bastard. Snape blinked. Well, he said slowly. This was a bit overwhelming. You're, talking about Draco, aren't you? How many godsons do you have? Hermione retorted. Snape paled. One. Then it's Draco. All right then. What do you want to know? It was Hermione's time to blink. He was being forward with her? Well, she might as well take this chance. It might be the only one she got. I want to know why Slytherin has such a dark reputation, whereas Gryffindor, which Draco assures me is just as evil, does not, Hermione requested. Severus sighed and massaged his head. The girl wanted a hierarchy lecture. One thing you ought to know before I continue, Miss Granger, is that almost all Slytherins are pureblood and not many Gryffindors are. Most Gryffindors are viewed as blood traitors, witches and wizards who turned their backs on what being magical actually meant. Blood traitors don't tolerate inbreeding, that is to say procreation between two of the same family, incest, and purebloods do not agree with breeding with muggles. That is distasteful to them. Consequently, due to repeated idiocy on both parts, Slytherins were soon treated as criminals within the magical world. Not helped by the multitude of Dark Lords that have emerged from our house, which is, by the way, a house for the cunning, not the evil. Those few simply used the advantage of being cunning to their benefit. They amassed followers and soon grew powerful. Gryffindors, by contrast, own no particular leaders, with the exception of Professor Dumbledore, of course. There are far more blood traitors than purebloods. Consequently, there are less Slytherins, and the sorting hat will not sort any student into the wrong house. So there is no reason to hope now that you are actually a Ravenclaw at heart, Miss Granger. Severus breathed deeply and pinched the bridge of his nose. Some would say this is a personal viewpoint, and at times I agree. However, what happened to me reflects what has happened to every half-blood in Slytherin for the last 400 or so years, he explained. Hermione looked worried. So, what did happen to you, sir? Miss Granger, that is a story for another day. Severus stood up. Come back tomorrow and I may be in a good enough mood to tell you. Until then, though, you are out after curfew. 5 points from Gryffindor, Miss Granger, and do not let me catch you out this late again. Yes, sir, Hermione replied quickly, and left without looking back. Severus sat down again rather suddenly. What had he got himself into? More the point, what had Draco got himself into? And why had Severus decided to oblige Miss Granger's request? Did he really need someone else to talk to so much that he would speak to a Gryffindor student? He must be losing his mind. He glanced at the photograph of Lily on the fireplace. She can't be that bad, can she, Lily? He asked pleadingly. After all, she is best friends with your son. The Lily in the photograph simply shrugged. There you go, another chapter. I decided to add an out-of-character Snape to join the slightly demented Hermione, confounded Lavender, sarcastic Draco, and caring Parvati. Well, I can just say my fanfic is getting a little bit out of hand, a little bit AU. Hope you enjoyed.
Veritas libra bivo.
Severus was wary. He paced his tiny office room, worrying. His usually impassive face showed discernible fear. Dumbledore's Pensieve glowed from its silvery substance, and in it Severus' face was reflected, though younger, as a year younger than Hermione. It was the incident after his Dadao. Severus had viewed it several times since then, however, he had not reviewed for over 10 years now, as he had no wish to dwell on those memories now Lily was dead. There was a timid knock. So Granger was as scared as he was? Good. Enter, he called. The girl walked in, seemingly resigned, like a prisoner ready for the guillotine. It was a disturbing sight. Good evening, sir, she greeted tentatively. Snape jerked his head in response. This is a Pensieve, he explained. Do you know what it does? It contains memories, Hermione answered, for once declining to quote the textbook. Yes, Granger, it contains memories, Snape sneered, hiding his nerves with his usual icy demeanor. It contains memories that can be shown to others. It is obvious when those memories have been tampered with or if certain scenes, if you will, of the memory are missing. Memories that have been proved true by their clarity are often used as testimony in the Wisengamot. It is against the wizarding code to trespass these memories without the owner's permission, he added pointedly. Hermione didn't meet his eyes, remembering what Harry had done the previous year. So what memory are you showing me? Hermione questioned at long last. This time it was the professor who would not meet her eyes. The same memory that your friend Mr. Potter saw last year, he replied. It will tell you something about Gryffindor House, I believe, judging by the look on Mr. Potter's face when he exited the Pensieve. He settled at his desk. When you have finished I will come and collect you. He picked up his quill and dipped it in his customary black ink. Sir? Severus looked up. Aren't you coming with me, sir? Good God. The girl sounded terrified. No, Miss Granger, Severus answered sagely. This is something you must do alone. There is always a time when you must choose between what is right and what is easy. The girl nodded, understanding. Then she dipped her head into the silvery surface and fell into Severus Snape's memories. Severus got to his feet, having emerged from the clump of bushes where he had been sitting. As he set off across the grass, Black and Potter stood. All right, Snevelis? Asked Potter loudly. Severus' reactions were lightning fast. He was always expecting an attack from Potter and his gang. But Potter's wand was already out and he yelled, Expelliarmus. Severus was disarmed. Black gave a bark of laughter. Impedimenta. Severus was interrupted in his dive towards his own wand. There was now a crowd of spectators. No one did anything to help the How'd the exam go, Snively? Potter questioned. Wait for what? Sirius said coolly. What are you going to do, Snively? Wipe your nose on us. Severus swore and tried to perform wandless magic. However, it wasn't working. Wash out your mouth, Potter said coldly. Scourgify. Pink soap bubbles streamed from Severus' mouth at once. The froth was covering his lips, making him gag, choking him. Hermione couldn't watch anymore. Seemingly sensing her distress, Professor Snape appeared in the memory beside her and tugged her elbow upwards. Once out, Hermione collapsed into a chair and wept, horrified at the bullying she had witnessed. Her own tenure at school hadn't been particularly pleasant, but nothing on the level of this. Harry's father had been a bully. Sirius had been one too. And Professor Lupin Remus had sat there doing nothing. According to Wikipedia, the title means truth shall set you free. Tell me if you think this title relates well to Severus' experience and Hermione's newfound knowledge. Comfort among colleagues. Severus had escorted Miss Granger back to her common room once her crying had eventually subsided. Then he began making his steady way up to the astronomy tower, his breath coming in harsh, uneven breaths. He hadn't always been afraid of heights, but his experience at 21 years of age had brought forth many fears he hadn't known even existed, that being one of them. Once he reached the top, he carefully made his way to the side and gripped the railings tightly. He gazed up at the stars, recalling his Newt-level astronomy knowledge, and attempted to relax. Severus remembered who he used to bring up here. A pretty girl with a mane of red, fiery hair, not dissimilar looking to young Miss Weasley. He remembered her understanding, clear green eyes, and he could picture the scattered freckles on her dainty little nose. She'd been so innocent, a breath of fresh air from the seriousness of academic life and his life, and he'd welcomed her childish qualities. They danced once or twice, up here, waltzing to silent music and swaying to invisible rhythms. They'd talked frequently. Severus had always looked forward to their discussions, even if it was only about the stars. They'd read too, of course, and he'd delighted in finding their shared interest of studying. There'd been facts that he hadn't known about her before Hogwarts. How she looked away when she was upset or sighed with worry. He hadn't realized how her eyes lit up when she learnt something new, or how her breaths quickened whenever he took her hand. They'd had innocence and purity, and in those days, with Voldemort always around the corner, those were the moments that were cherished. But that had all changed, Severus remembered. They'd drifted apart. They'd faced adversity. They'd even made up after the incident after their dead OWL, and then she did the unthinkable. She began going out with his sworn enemy. Severus couldn't begrudge her happiness. She knew that he was too vulnerable to embark on a romantic relationship, and despite their love for one another, neither wanted to stray beyond the boundaries of friendship. They had too much to lose. Then she'd gone off after Hogwarts and married Potter, and she was suddenly expecting a child. A son. And he overheard that blasted prophecy and ruined her life. He would never be able to forgive himself. He breathed in the sweet night air and heard footsteps behind him. There was no mistaking who that could be. Albus, Severus spoke hoarsely. Thinking about her always made him melancholy. Severus, the old man greeted. Deep in contemplation. Memories, he answered. The other nodded in understanding. She haunts you still. It was a statement, not a question. She'll never leave. But you'll see her again, Severus, Albus said, consoling. One day, far in the future. You always were optimistic, old man, Severus sneered. I think it's far more likely that it'll be in the near future, and never. She'll be in heaven, and I'll be in hell, paying penance for my sins. You look too often to the light, dear friend. I am overwhelmed by darkness. In that case, you have another follower to your dark cult, said Albus, attempting to brighten the mood. You, Miss Granger, Albus answered seriously. She was deeply moved. You know things are hard on those who never fully integrated themselves in our world. Your world, Albus. I never considered myself integrated either, Severus sighed. Albus' eyes glittered with concern. Well, you should consider yourself integrated. I do. Albus paused and then added, consider you integrated into our world. I mean, if you say so, Albus, Severus murmured, looking out at the sky again. Yes, I do, my son. You would do well to remember it. The two stood there for a while, in comforting silence, and eventually Albus' arm draped over the other's shoulder in companionship. Severus laid his head on his guardian's shoulder and drifted off to sleep, for once untroubled by memories. Anne, hope you liked this chapter. A bit of Snumbledore here. Despite everyone knowing who Severus is thinking about, I thought it was more melancholy to omit her name. I feel like all my fanfics, whether they are snily or not, always revolve around Severus Snape and his complex character. Can you imagine Alan Rickman in this scene? I can. Together, you spoke to Severus then? It was a rhetorical question, and they both knew it. Hermione had been avoiding her house since she'd seen the horrible memory 2 nights ago, and she'd finally plucked up the courage to speak to Draco again. He went through a lot, both before, during, and after Hogwarts. He doesn't associate many happy memories with this place. Draco looked around at the walls pensively. Why does he stay? Asked Hermione. She'd wondered, Ever since she'd first had a lesson with the grumpy potions master. Why he taught at a school he clearly loathed. He could be so much more than a schoolteacher. I know, replied Draco. I've often questioned him. There's a very important reason why, but I've never found out what it is. The two sat in contemplative silence for a bit. Then Draco spoke. I've never understood why everyone hates him. I know he's bitter. I know he's cruel. But if he wasn't, no one would ever get anything done around here. He taught Potter Expelliarmus at the dueling club, which is now his signature move. He cured those petrified by the basilisk, including you, spending many nights sleeplessly attending to cauldrons of bubbling liquids. He makes thousands of drafts and vials for the hospital wing every year, and no one has ever been poisoned under his watch. His class gets the highest grades without fail. He does everything around here. Hermione looked at the Slytherin thoughtfully. What the wizarding world needs is psychiatrists, she said. They could tell you that his moodiness reflects bitterness of the lot he's been given in life. They could tell you that he's remorseful, regretful. They could tell you that he's experienced a horrific past. They could tell you many things. But the Hogwarts students can't read past the cover. They pause on the sour, gloomy face. They rove over the dark, hating eyes, the thin, tightly pressed lips, the sallow face. They see an image and they look to the stereotype that accompanies it. This school doesn't teach humanity or kindness. It breeds hate, fear, and anger. And we need to stop that. Yes, Draco agreed. We do need to stop it. It might be too late for my godfather. Too many people have renounced him and repudiated him. But we can still save those that have yet to turn to the darkness. We have a chance to change this. We will, Hermione said forcefully. We'll make it right again. We'll end it, added Draco. How we started it. Together. It's been too long since I've last updated. And it's a short one, I'm afraid. However, I think, and I hope you do as well, that it's a worthwhile one. Draco and Hermione combine forces to fight against the hatred of Hogwarts School. Does the last line bring back memories of the Deathly Hallows movie trailer? It does for me. Thank you for reading. Ubiquitous unity. However, it was to the contrary. Professor Snape didn't look nearly as stern as normal, and Professor McGonagall was beaming. 10 points to Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, McGonagall said, smiling, and Snape nodded curtly at Hermione and Draco as he went by. The two Ravenclaws, one of whom was Padma Patil, asked if they could start a study group for potions, among all houses in all years. Why not? Said Hermione. It's a really good idea, Padma. We need to try and bring along as many people as possible. Saturday night at 8? Can't? Interjected Blaise. Draco and the team have Quidditch practice. Can we do earlier at 6? The Ravenclaws looked so surprised that the Slytherins were joining in that they agreed at once. See you Saturday. Then, Padma waved and walked off with her friend. Who did you find? Asked Draco, raising an eyebrow at her lack of companions. It was you who suggested bringing friends, didn't you? I couldn't find anyone, Hermione replied, utterly disappointed with herself. Gryffindors aren't really into whole school unity, are they? She joked flatly. So what is this group, then?
Terry Boat questioned.
And why are they here? He nodded at the Slytherins. Aren't they the barrier preventing us from uniting outside of our own houses? Blaise fiercely opened his mouth to answer, but Hermione cut in first. No, Terry. The Gryffindors are the true cause. Terry looked unconvinced. Saw something recently that forced me to change my opinion of Gryffindor House. If you look beyond the camouflage of bravery, Gryffindors are stubborn, selfish, cruel, and often stupid. I needed something extraordinary to help me see that. I think the others will need that too. We can show them unity and see how they respond. We need all the help we can get. Against Voldemort, we have to work together. So this is a recruitment scheme? Questioned Daphne. You want another, what was it, Dumbledore's army? I'm not being used as a pawn. Tell your precious Dumbledore that the Slytherins will pick the right side when it comes to it, and that it may not be his. And she stormed out. I'm so sorry, her sister Astoria apologized. I'll go and talk her round. I know what you're doing, Granger, and I like it. and she followed her sibling out the door. That's that, then said Blaise. We're really doing this. Yes, Draco answered. We are. The determined gleam never left his eyes, even as they tackled the harshest of Galpalot's laws. Draco and Hermione begin their campaign to unite the whole of Hogwarts. How will Ron and Harry take it? Read on for more shocks and surprises. Thank you for reading. Warning, Ron bashing. Ron cornered Hermione in the common room. What are you doing? He demanded, face already ruby red. What? Asked Hermione. She refused to cower before Gryffindor's coward of cowards. You've been hanging out with slimy Slytherins and rotten Ravenclaws, and? Hermione questioned icily. I wasn't under the impression that talking was a crime, and I am, as you are hopefully aware, your fellow prefect, so I do know the rules inside out. Lavender and Parvati approached them. What about Ravenclaws? Parvati inquired, eyes flashing angrily. That's my sister you're mouthing off about. Ron retreated slightly. Ginny came up to Hermione. When did you say that meeting was, Hermione? I'd like to attend, if Ron hasn't already ruined the Weasley reputation for good. The youngest Weasley firmly ignored her brother. Of course, Ginny, Hermione said amiably. The Saturday at 6. Ron stared at the both of them incredulously. Hey, what are you doing? He shouted at Hermione. I don't want my little sister involved in your Slytherin squad. Talk to the hand, Ronald. Ginny sighed, raising her hand and stalking off with Hermione, Lavender and Parvati in tow. I guess the crush has truly been crushed. Then Lavender said worriedly, looking at Hermione. You used to be into him. Yes, Hermione replied distractedly. But then I met someone better. She trailed off as Draco, Blaise and Astoria walked up to them. Still on for Saturday? Astoria beamed. Yes, and I've recruited Ginny, she mentioned. Draco nodded at the younger girl and Blaise smiled welcomingly. We'd like to join too. Hermione, Lavender exclaimed. Yes, didn't we make it obvious? Parvati questioned. If my sister's in it, it must be good. Lavender muttered something which might have been something like, if Malfoy's in it, I'll definitely come in Slytherin. Hermione felt a strange burst of jealousy. Draco, if I might have a word? Of course, Hermione. It felt odd to use the Gryffindor's name after years of a surname or worse, a curse. The two turned a corner. Weasley's against the entire idea, Hermione admitted, not meeting his eyes. Oh, so it's Weasley now, is it? Draco chuckled softly. I've been waiting for years to see the Golden Trio split. Well, I haven't seen Harry yet, Hermione countered. Also, Lavender's got a crush on you. Surely not just every hot blonde within a 5-meter radius? Inquired Draco modestly. She was going for Oliver Rivers yesterday. She doesn't go for Hufflepuffs. Hermione confessed nervously. Okay, said Draco slowly. Well, I'd best be on my guard. He began walking off, then stopped. Oh, and Hermione, it might be good to have Potter on board. The chosen one may acquire devoted followers. So might you, Hermione thought dreamily, looking at the Slytherin's sandy hair. Wait, what? Okay, she said quickly and hurried off, pink spots appearing on her cheeks as she raced down the corridor. And will always hate Ronald Bilious Weasley. Anyway, just so that we're clear, who does Hermione like? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Smiley face. What will Harry's reaction be? Thank you for reading and please comment. Some serious studying. Hermione was pleased to see how many followers they'd amassed at the next meeting. There was Lavender, Parvati and Ginny from Gryffindor. Sue Lee and Anthony Goldstein were along for their first meeting from Ravenclaw, and Ernie Macmillan and Hannah Abbott turned up from Hufflepuff, expectant and unsurprisingly eager. Blaise had also coerced one more Slytherin, Malcolm Baddock. So, said Ernie, rubbing his hands together, let's get started. What are we learning? Hermione? Hermione began to speak. Well, we've decided to expand on more than just potions, as there are now some of us that don't do potions here currently. She glanced at Parvati, Lavender, and Hannah. I thought we could incorporate all subjects. Most of us did a lot of data last year, so maybe we don't need to start with that. She tailed off as she saw Daphne's red face. Yes, Daphne? Disadvantage. I'm sure you learnt far more curses than us as a child. Marcus Belby said pompously. fixing Daphne with an unsettling glare. Sort it outside, guys, Padma exclaimed. Honestly, this is why we need to resolve our differences. Yeah, said Lavender. What she said. Draco gave Hermione a look which said, continue. As I was saying, we don't particularly need to start with Dada. Hermione started when she left off, but we can always study that if there is a particular concern we need to address. At that moment, someone knocked on the door and they all froze. Do we need to hide? Whispered Lavender, already beginning to edge over to a cupboard. Of course not, Hermione hissed. We're not past curfew. I am, Ginny said nervously. Well, you are with almost all the sixth-year prefects, Draco pointed out drily, with the exception of Pugface and Weasley. It looks like it, Blaise drawled, eyeing up Harry's disheveled state. I've been listening to Ron ranting about you and Ginny all evening, Harry told Hermione, ignoring Blaise. I hope you haven't brought my idiot brother along, threatened Ginny fiercely. Harry gulped. Of course not, he protested. He made me want to strangle him. Well, why didn't you? Questioned Draco, leaning casually against a pillar. Would have done us all a favor. Definitely, mumbled Lavender, nudging Parvati. She wouldn't forget about Ron's infidelity anytime soon. Anyway, should we continue? Ernie asked. Yes, said Hermione. Harry, are you staying? What are you studying? Herbology, Hermione replied, which you really need some work on. Hannah and Ernie nodded commiseratingly. It's true, added Ernie. Fine, Harry answered, scowling at Ernie, Hannah and Hermione.
I'm staying.
And Harry joins the study group. It was first, obviously, supposed to be potions, but then I looked through the half-blood prints and realized I've got more people than the 12 mentioned as getting through to their potions newt. The nicknames Pugface and Weasley are Pansy and Ron. The remaining prefects, and Ron's infidelity, refers to Lavender thinking that Ron was too obsessed with Hermione. Thank you for reading and please comment. If you comment, you will get a chapter dedicated to you. This one is dedicated to piece of parchment for her obsession with Hermione, banter and betting. The meeting progressed unnaturally peacefully. Harry kept quiet, occasionally giving Draco accusing glares and looking perplexed. Hermione felt that their little group deserved a name. She called out to Draco as he made to leave at the end of the session. It was nearing their own curfew. What are we to be called? Draco looked back. What about the Avengers? What? We're taking revenge on the idiots that ruined our education, aren't we? Quirrell, Voldemort, Lockhart, Binns. All right, I get the point, Hermione said hastily. Ginny laughed. It's got a ring to it, she commented. I like it. Good one, Draco. She clapped him on the back and walked out, Harry following her. Blaise then left, deep in conversation with Padma and Lavender, both of whom were looking adoringly at him. Malcolm Baddock was speaking to Sue Lee and Anthony Goldstein was conversing with Hannah and Ernie. It was just her and Draco who were in silence. Who do you think will be the first couple? Asked Draco suddenly. Hermione started, surprised. Blaise and Padma? It sounded more like a question. Draco smirked. I reckon Potter and Weasley. Ginevra, not Ronald, he added quickly. Even Potter's sick of Weasley. What are we saying then? 5 galleons. 5 galleons. 5 nuts, more like. 10 sickles.
No.
10 nuts. 1 sickle. Fine. Hermione glanced up at Draco. You know, we really shouldn't be gambling. We're prefects. Of course I know, Draco replied calmly, looking down at her. His gray eyes were mesmerizing. Otherwise I wouldn't be a prefect. Hermione stared into his eyes, stock still. She finally awoke from her admiring trance when Draco coughed softly.
Yes.
Of course, she said at once and hurried off. Draco stood there for a moment, grinning to himself, before striding off himself. He knew what effect he had on the ladies. Hermione met Harry and Ginny in the Great Hall for breakfast the following day. Hello, you two, she greeted and then saw their joined hands. Any news? We're dating, Ginny stated happily. She smiled at Harry and he beamed back. Surprised. Hermione? No, Hermione replied to the blonde boy standing smirking a few feet away. Hand it over. He beckoned one pale hand. Hermione sighed and dug deep in her pocket for a shiny silver sickle. I have nothing left for honeydukes now, she said sadly. staring at her feet. Draco looked at her. I'll get you something, he reassured. Hermione looked up in shock. Really? She practically purred. Of course. Draco offered his arm to her and they walked out of the doors, Hermione stopping to grab some toast on the way. A long walk in the grounds seemed indicated, during which if they had time they might discuss the new couple.
Ian.
I apologize for the delay in updates. I gave up all my fanfics for a bit and just updated Severus, Reformed. Hope you like the chapter and the ending, and don't hesitate to comment. Thank you. Revenge on Ron. Hermione. Familiar blonde hair rounded the corner, followed by Hermione's current favorite person. Draco, she said warmly. Ready for Hogsmeade? He asked, looking at the bag in Hermione's hand. Draco raised an eyebrow. I saw Weasley sulking by that tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy and the trolls. He was having a right old snuffle. Not like him at all, Hermione commented sarcastically. Where's Blaise? Snogging Padma, he answered casually. Hermione's mouth gaped open. So I was right? She gasped. Yes. Here. He dropped a sickle into her outstretched hand. Let's go to Hogsmeade. Hermione. Yes, let's. She slipped her hand into his and they walked away, oblivious to the angry blue eyes that followed their progress. Hermione could honestly not remember a time when she'd had more fun. Draco was the ever-gracious gentleman, paying for their butterbeers at the Three Broomsticks, buying her a book on house elves that she'd been eyeing for a full 5 minutes, and even purchasing a blanket so that they could travel up to the Shrieking Shack and sit just beyond the fence in contemplative silence. Thank you, Draco, she murmured, not taking her eyes off his handsome face. He tore his own eyes away from the beautiful scenery to look at the pretty girl beside him. You're welcome, Hermione, he replied, looking deeply into the melting chocolate that was her eyes. Oh! Regretfully, Hermione turned from Draco's luscious lips to see a furious Ronald Weasley. Get away from my girlfriend. Ron hauled Hermione away, causing her to trip and land hard on the ground. What do you think you're doing? Hermione shouted, getting up from the grass. Calling yourself my boyfriend? I haven't spoken to you in weeks. I love you, yelled Ron. I thought you knew that. How would I? Hermione screamed back. You've always been a jerk to me. Do you think I never noticed whenever you called me an insufferable little know-it-all? It hurt, Weasley, it hurt. What about that ferret? Ron roared, pointing at Draco. He's always insulted you. I would never call you that name. You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach. Hermione instantly had her wand out, pointed directly at Ron. You wouldn't, Ron stuttered, suddenly afraid. Yes, I would, Hermione snarled. Petrificus totalis. Ron's limbs froze and he fell backwards, motionless. Both Hermione and Draco approached his still figure, Hermione's hand now back in Draco's. You never know. Maybe the wolves will come out and have a little fun with him, Draco told Hermione, an evil smile on his face. Certainly the werewolves, Hermione replied savagely. I've heard there are a few around here, waiting for children that lurk here after dark. Ron's eyes went round with fear. Hermione laughed hysterically. Enjoy your stay. With one final manic burst of cackling, Hermione left with Draco in tow. And not so far in the distance, a wolf began to howl.
Ian.
Finally, another chapter. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for reading, and please comment. It means the world. Smiley face, Granger gossip. Did we actually just leave Ron in Hogsmeade? Asked Hermione eventually as they walked up the hill towards the castle. Yes, I believe we did, Draco replied coolly. Wow. Hermione sounded reasonably shocked. I never actually thought I'd do it. No, I didn't think you would either, Draco commented. Anyway, he's left to be werewolf food. Hermione laughed. Have there ever been werewolves in Hogsmeade? Draco questioned. Hermione nodded. You'll have to inform me. Well, from 1971 to 78, there was of course Remus Lupin, and he returned in 1993 to terrorize the castle and all its inhabitants. Draco greeted Professor Snape. Miss Granger. He nodded at the Gryffindor. The two had been walking through the dungeons, as you do when you have nothing else to do. What was it I heard about a certain irksome Weasley? Is he currently out of sorts next to the Shrieking Shack? You may be right, Draco replied slowly, looking at Hermione. Hermione blushed. Well, we mustn't speculate, advised the usually brusque potions master. I won't keep you, and he waved them on down the corridor, a small smirk playing on the professor's face. Did that actually just happen? Hermione whispered as they turned the corner. Did Professor Snape just wave at us? Don't you mean, did Severus just completely ignore the fact that we left Weasley to rot in Hogsmeade? Draco murmured back. He isn't generally that jubilant, even if you did curse his least favorite Weasley, stated Draco. He has favorites? Hermione exclaimed, gasping. Really? Draco smirked, and Hermione soon broke into girly giggles. Now Hermione, Monday was a sad day for all of Hogwarts. Draco was in the Great Hall at the Slytherin table with Pansy, Blaise, Crabbe and Goyle when Ron Weasley was ushered in, swathed in a blanket and his hair dripping. Dark. Well, interrupted Pansy, propping herself up on one elbow. The Ravenclaws say that it was the mudblood Granger who cursed him. Blaise gave her a look. That's what they told me. She threw her hands up in surrender. The Ravenclaws talk to you? Blaise asked, snorting, glancing at her with disgust. Anyway, said Draco, I heard that Granger cursed him because he called her his girlfriend and then proceeded to declare his undying love for her. Blaise looked shocked. How did you find that out? Draco gave them all a smug look. I was there. Meanwhile, at the Gryffindor table, Harry and Ginny were having an intense conversation regarding the latter's brother. How did he get there? Ginny asked, dumbfounded. I mean, he's stupid, but Neville stupid? I don't get it. Neville looked over, crestfallen. Sorry, Neville. Harry appeared confused as well. Well, Ginny, he is being a bit loopy at the moment. Like as loopy as Luna. Luna chose that moment to drift over. You're just as sane as I am, Harry. She smiled, and drifted off again. Harry shivered. That was creepy. Undoubtedly, Hermione spoke. To tell you the truth, apologies Ginny, he is your brother. I cursed him and left him to the wolves, as they say. There are wolves in Hogsmeade? Was Harry's first question. Hermione rolled her eyes. Of course not. How on earth did you get an outstanding in your dead owl? Harry made to speak. Don't answer that. I don't want to know. Hermione, the brown-haired which turned to the red-haired one. You cursed my brother? I'm afraid so, Ginny, Hermione replied, bowing her head in shame. She was shocked to hear Ginny's sudden guffaw. Brilliant. Hermione, wait until I tell Fred and George. She rushed off. Harry looked at Hermione. He was our friend for 6 years, Hermione, he said sadly. I know, Harry, said Hermione, just as miserably. But he's being a jerk. You know that. You also know that he wouldn't approve of yours and
Ian.
This was the best chapter to write. Everyone's acting very strangely and out of character and I love it. I hope you do too. Thank you for reading and please comment. Feedback is great. Smiley face, a prank worthy of Peeves. The Avengers had a record attendance the week of Ron's incapacitation. It appeared, as Hermione could have guessed, that that particular Weasley wasn't loved anywhere. He had been seen trawling around with Zacharias Smith, though, and no one was surprised by that either. The Hufflepuff was surly, brimming with self-pity and rude. Ron and Zacharias shared many unsatisfactory qualities. Bad pennies together, Draco suggested as he watched Weasley glare at him and Hermione. She looked at him in surprise. Muggle phrases. Draco? I thought we were taking baby steps, she said mockingly. Draco smirked. I don't need to take baby steps. Not when I have you to translate everything into Muggle language for me. Hermione laughed. True. They walked together in silence for a few more steps until Hermione stopped and glanced back at Weasley and Smith thoughtfully. You know what? What? I want to play a prank on them. You what, Granger? I want to prank them. Who are you and what have you done with Hermione Granger? Hermione gave him a long-suffering look. It's because of what Ron once said. I'm going to make sure I get his mates before he gets mine. Nice bit of payback, don't you think? Well, of course. You don't need me to tell you that your plans are always amazing and incredibly stupid. Hermione smiled at him. That's what I like about you. At first, it was only going to be her and Draco that pranked Ron and Smith. However, she told Harry, who wanted to help, and he told Ginny, who was extremely eager to join in, and then soon enough all the Avengers knew and were very, very enthusiastic. Almost all of them had been wronged by one of the two at some point in their schooling career. Okay. Ginny whispered into the extendable ears, peering over the banisters. Hermione stood next to her. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Down below, Draco suddenly appeared from behind a pillar and confronted Ron and Smith. "Hello there, my chums," he greeted, smiling broadly. "If you'd like to come this way, refreshments are available." He escorted the bewildered boys over to where Parvati and Padma Patil stood with Lavender. "For your atre expelliarmus," announced Draco. Simultaneously, the twins flicked their wands. The boys' wands were blasted away, and Lavender retrieved them with a simple accio. For Maine called Padma, Rictum Sempra. The boys bowled over in uncontrollable laughter. As a side, Parvati muttered, her voice sounding somber, "Defindo." The necklace Lavender had gifted Ron with dropped to the floor. Lavender took it and smashed it under the heel of her boot. "And for afters," said Draco again, "obliviate." He waved his own wand, and the furious expressions on both boys' faces were immediately wiped off to show confusion. Hermione appeared by his side. Also, as an afterthought, perhaps muffliato, she said hurriedly, hearing, "Split up, folks," Ginny suggested, and she followed the twins and Lavender into a nearby lavatory. Presents. Professor McGonagall pursed her lips and Professor Dumbledore beamed. "Ah, how lovely," he exclaimed, looking fondly at his students, before leaving to sort out the two boys with McGonagall. Only Snape guessed the truth. He smirked and waited for them to break apart so that he could speak. 10 points to Slytherin, Granger. And Draco, 10 points to Gryffindor. "Ah, Godfather," said Draco, "if I was still part of Umbridge's gang, I'd give Hufflepuff 10 points. Their potions master just laughed. And poor Ron. Not. Thank you for reading, and please remember to write comments and give advice and such things." Winky face, common goals. The news that Draco Malfoy was going out with his long-term enemy, the Muggle-born Hermione Granger, caused a great stir in the community of Hogwarts. Professor Dumbledore was half thrilled, half concerned. The 4 heads of houses were delighted, and both Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were over the moon that the school could finally unite. Ironically, only Gryffindor and Slytherin couldn't get over it. However, Draco and Hermione were mostly safe as they were 6th years and, to top it all, prefects, so no one younger could touch them. Despite this, there were still several people who could potentially harm them. Pansy was exceptionally jealous that Draco had gone for a mudblood after 6 years of knowing her, of all people. There was also Millicent Bulstrode, Tracy Davis, and Theodore Knott, who Draco had briefly bonded with the year before, but never again. And Ron, of course. He was perhaps the most dangerous of them all. However, Ron was currently in the hospital wing with Smith, recovering his memory, so the biggest threat was momentarily gone. So Hermione and Draco enjoyed their time together, basking by the lake in the glorious sunlight, and spending their free periods together at a table at the back of the library. They ran the Avengers as a united front, and enjoyed planning their next moves to properly integrate the school. "What about using each other's common rooms?" Draco asked one night as they sat in the kitchens, Hermione often watching the house elves to see if they were doing all right, and possibly to check if any of them were wearing her hats. "I've always wanted to see if the other common rooms were warmer than Slytherin's." "That's a good idea," Hermione mused, jotting it down. Draco had bought her a personalized notebook for Valentine's Day as a symbol of their 1-week anniversary. It bore the words, "My know-it-all," and Hermione used it often. "I've always wanted to see the Ravenclaw one." All those books. Draco snapped his fingers to bring her out of reverie. "We could try it tomorrow," he suggested. "After the match. After all, we've already done the whole consorting at other houses' tables thing. Why don't half the Avengers go to Hufflepuff and half to Ravenclaw to either console them or celebrate with them after the match?" "Brilliant!" Hermione exclaimed. "We must tell the others." She made to stand and Draco guided her back down. "Hermione, it's past curfew," he whispered, grinning. "Oh," was all she said. "Disillusionment charms?" "You betcha," Draco replied. Hermione smiled broadly. You got that off me, didn't you? Muggle sayings will always rub off on me when you're around. I wish we could do this more often, Hermione gasped, as they reached the fat lady's portrait. Who's there? The latter questioned suspiciously, peering into the settling gloom. And someone's in love. Hermione has finally made its appearance. This is dedicated to Scarly Cyan if she reads it or not. Either way, a nice person who reads some stuff I write and forms the trio with JKR Hero and I. Be friendly, and it might become a quartet. Thank you for reading. If you still do, and remember, comments make my days, my weeks, my year, my life. You get the picture. The match was over extraordinarily quickly. Ravenclaw won by a lead of 170-60 and afterwards, Hermione told the Avengers of their plan. In the end, Harry headed off to cheer up Hufflepuff with Ginny, Blaise, Padma, Lavender and Parvati, and Draco and Hermione went to congratulate Ravenclaw with the remaining Slytherins. Isn't it exciting? Exclaimed Hermione to Draco over the partying noise, butterbeer in hand from Luna. Godric knew how she'd got it. Look at all the books. Draco smiled at her exhilaration. I know, he yelled over the music from the nearby wizarding wireless. And the temperature is actually decent. I'm more surprised they let us in, to be honest, Hermione said, looking around. Sorry to be rude, but Slytherins? You aren't welcome in many places. I'm not too shocked, Draco replied. We've always got on well with Ravenclaws. Maybe because they're actually smart compared with you red and yellows. Hey! Hermione smacked him lightly on the arm. Draco grinned. It's nice, isn't it? Luna asked, drifting over. Very peaceful. Extremely, Hermione agreed. She'd got on better with the loopy girl since the ministry fiasco. Actually, thinking of that, Luna, would you like to join the Avengers? The Ravenclaw beamed. I'd love to. It'll be like having friends. And with that disconcerting sentence, she moved on again to browse the bookshelves. Lovegood's an interesting character, Draco commented, staring fixatedly at the pale blonde hair. Hey boyfriend, that got Draco's attention. Hermione smiled shyly, and Draco suddenly noticed how pretty and disarming those melting chocolate eyes were. Hey girlfriend, he whispered. He put his head closer to hers and leaned in. Their lips met like worlds colliding. The music faded into the hum of an "Aren't I the lucky one?"
Ian.
And with that rhetorical question, another short, decidedly dodgy chapter is over. I'd like to say now that I need any suggestions and thank you so much for reading, as usual, and as is my mantra. Please comment. Troublesome twins. Hermione and Draco had been with Ginny and Harry when the twins arrived. They'd been relaxing in the library with the couples facing each other on opposite sides, as Harry still wasn't entirely comfortable with Draco. How's our favorite? 4? Came a voice. Fred and George emerged from behind the bookshelves. Someone tell us what's going on, Fred said calmly, eyeing Draco suspiciously. Well, so, Draco began. Someone's who's not the blonde ferret, the two interrupted simultaneously. Draco scowled, but sat back as Ginny took the lead. Well, brothers mine, Ron is being a twerp. Lavender broke up with him because he was spending too much time with Hermione, she explained. Lavender Brown? George asked disgustedly. The very same, replied Hermione. Anyway, said Ginny, continuing, you know what happened in Hogsmeade? Yes, George stated slowly. Ron called Hermione his girlfriend and so she cursed him. You were in the right, don't worry, Fred told the apprehensive girl. Ronikins has always been a sore loser, but now he's gone too far, so we obliviated him and Zacharias Smith, finished Ginny. The twins wore similarly confused faces. Wow, they said together. You crossed the boundary. Well, you didn't do it, Hermione corrected Ginny. Draco did, and he is dark, Harry pointed out. Draco growled lowly. Oh well, one of the twins flapped a hand. It's over. I think we can disown him now. So, on to more exciting news. Have you heard about Dumbledore and McGonagall's betting pool? Questioned the other. No, said Ginny curiously. Well, they were betting on who would get together first, you and Harry. George started. Or Hermione and M. Draco, Fred stammered. Nosy bastards, Draco muttered under his breath. How did they know? Harry asked. Espionage, Fred said. tapping the side of his nose. I wonder why they're even here, Ginny mused. Hermione, do you know? Hermione, who had been slowly sinking into a daydream, straightened up. I expect it's to do with Ron. She shrugged, a strange look on her face. Draco nudged her. What's up? He questioned. I was thinking that people like Fred and George could help us win the war. She met the gazes of three dumbfounded individuals. She lowered her head and muttered to the table. Just a thought. Hermione and Albus betting pool makes an appearance. Claim your idea. Humble reader. Fred and George are making more than just a debut in this, don't worry. They'll be back for the next chapter, the one after that, and maybe the one after that. XD. Thank you for reading and please comment. Ginger Goons. Is that? Professor McGonagall exclaimed. It is, confirmed Professor Snape. They've come to do some research. It was clear that the surly potions master did not believe this excuse for 1 minute. He and McGonagall sat at the high table in the Great Hall, and had been discussing a new theory of Snape's over dinner, when the Transfiguration professor had caught sight of the Weasley twins sitting with their sister Ginny at the Gryffindor table. Has Weasley, the stupid one, Severus added, so as not to confuse Minerva, regained his memory yet? No, he hasn't, Minerva replied, watching the twins interact with Ginny and Hermione. Smith has, though. A poor addition to Hufflepuff. Severus shook his head. I'm sure Pomona agrees. Minerva gave him a stern look. Pomona respects her students, and their talents equally, she told him sharply. As do I. Severus snorted. Anyway, he said, waving aside the previous subtopic of conversation, the twins have asked to come and see me in my office after dinner. Check for traps first, Minerva advised good-humoredly. Oh, they wouldn't dare prank me, Severus smirked. They tried, once, and failed, I presume? Of course they failed, Minerva. It was me they were trying to sabotage. Fred and George arrived at Severus' office very promptly after dinner. You've improved your punctuality, I see, the potions master commented wryly, opening the door. Well, we worked at it, said George. And it improved with age, grinned Fred. Come in, Severus rolled his eyes, and the three retreated into his office. So, what did you want to see me for? Inquired Severus, sitting back in his favorite armchair. The twins settled down on the sofa opposite. Well, we'd like to join the order, began George. And knowing, as we do, that you are Dumbledore's right-hand man, continued Fred. We thought it best to pay you a visit first, finished George. Severus raised an eyebrow. Is that so? We always knew you were Dumbledore's favorite, Professor, Fred stated solemnly. Even more so than Professor McGonagall. And how did you know that? Severus asked with unusual amusement. George gave him a knowing look. You were always our favorite, sir. I mean, potions was one of our top results in our OWLs. And would have been if you'd continued to Newts, interjected Severus sternly. We wanted to, Fred told him. Umbridge skewered our plans. Severus leant back in his chair. I must say, you did well without Newts, he praised. Thank you, sir, the twins spoke simultaneously, abashed. And so, now I must confess that I already knew you wanted to join the order, continued the older man, with a twinkle in his eye. How? The twins questioned, leaning forwards. A brilliant invention called, if I'm right, extendable ears. There was a silence. And then, you bought one of our products? You actually have a pair? The twins spoke as one. Severus smiled. I did. I do, he answered. How else do you think I know everything that goes on around here? Fred shrugged. Magic, sir? Ah,
Ian.
Next up. The twins are inducted into the order. As Hermione said, people like the twins could help them win the war. Smiley face, thank you for reading and please comment. Pragmatic, not planning. Is it dangerous? George asked as he, Fred, and Professor Snape waited in the hallway of Grimmauld Place. Deadly, Severus said seriously. As much so as the unbreakable vow. And boy, he knew all about that. The twins paled drastically. At the moment, Dumbledore popped his head round the door to the living room.
Come in, Messrs. Weasley, Severus.
Your time has come, boys. Good luck, Severus told them, smirking. How many loopholes did you find? Inquired Severus, looked down at the twins' relieved faces as they stood outside the great hall. having Operat back to fill in some paperwork. Give or take. 3, answered Fred. There was the one, obviously, about to the best of your abilities, and the thing about keeping your fellow members safe from harm, we would try to do that regardless, continued George. And then there's the point about never revealing the Order's secrets to anyone, Fred commented. 'Cause there's some sort of hex on us now that means we can't anyway. Well done, Severus praised. You missed the other 6, but apart from that, 6, what were they? Not winding up those boys again, are you Severus? Dumbledore questioned, giving him a sharp look from the end of the corridor. Of course not, Headmaster, Severus replied respectfully. In that case, I need you to assist me with something. I'm sure the boys can find something to do in the meantime before you see them out. The two walked down the corridor, away from the twins, and as they did so, Severus looked round and stated, there were 9 in mine, and winked. Fred and George did easily find something to do. They sought out Hermione, Malfoy, Harry, and Ginny, and began organizing a prank war. Some notes in Ginny's History of Magic textbook. Hermione had refused to give up any of her precious parchment. Said Draco, paying close attention to the plan. We have to go through the details. Harry seemed to feel nearly as guilty as her. Guys, is this really the right thing to do? He whined.
No, scoffed Draco.
But it's fun. You've got to hear this. So, Fred took charge. Ginny is going to start off by spreading Peruvian instant darkness powder all along here. He ran his finger along a first-floor corridor, and then Draco will come running from the Slytherin common room in the dungeons, screaming or something of that sort, about a break-in in the dungeons. The Slytherins will go along with it easily. Draco nodded. Simplis? Hermione questioned, uneasily. It sounds like there's an infinite number of things that could go horribly wrong. We could get killed, we could get expelled. Yeah, that's worse. Harry raised his head from the table where he'd plunked it in frustration. If I'm doing it, you're doing it, Hermione. And are you doing it? He blinked. Does it look like I've got a choice? Hermione looked round at Draco, Ginny, Fred and George's exhilarated, determined faces. Nope. I can't tell whether it's me not taking the FIC seriously, or the FIC not taking me seriously. Honestly, the first chapter had such dark themes, and look where we are now 12 chapters away from the end with a prank war. I'm gonna start updating every week, just so that I finish it quicker. Important exams this year, so obviously the prank war will feature next and so will Remus. Thank you for reading. Comment if you have any ideas, and continue reading till the very end. Carnage and mayhem. Hermione should probably point out now that the prank war could have gone a whole lot worse. The first floor corridor had been successfully blackened with Peruvian instant darkness powder by Ginny, and Draco had sounded genuinely terrified as he haired up the stairs with plenty of his fellow Slytherins calling for Professor Snape. Professor, I'm telling my father about this. And so Professor Snape had sedately followed his house back to their common room, looking typically unimpressed, and remained there for a while, clearly witnessing the wreckage that his godson had caused in the room. Then, after Professor Snape was safely ensconced in the Slytherin common room, Ginny had run to tell her that Harry had set off the dung bombs. Shortly afterwards, Harry joined them, sweaty but relieved he'd done his job. Never make me do that again, he ordered Ginny, who simply laughed at him. Okay, said Hermione, now I've got to set a flock of birds on you. Ready? Harry rolled his eyes petulantly, as if, good.
Avis.
Puño. Hermione could tell that Harry and Ginny did not like being attacked by cute blue baby birds, but she had no choice. Stick to the plan. She hurried away down the corridor without looking back and then waited a suitable time. As soon as a person emerged from round the corner, Hermione let loose a great hacking cough. Hermione, you okay? Questioned Hannah Abbott anxiously. Yes, fine, Hermione replied, sucking in a deep breath. Something must have gotten stuck somewhere. It was a tad too dramatic on Ginny's part, but then again, she always had been a drama queen. Is that Ginny Weasley? Hannah asked. Yes, it is, Hermione replied. We should see what's wrong. Hannah sounded petrified. Arriving with someone else was essential to the plan, to deflect the blame off her. If it's monsters, then we should go together, Hermione said with hesitant certainty. I think I'll go get help, Hannah said before rushing off the way she'd come. Great, Hermione muttered, and returned to Harry and Ginny. The two were covered in tiny scratches and seemed pretty desperate. Remove the spell, Hermione. Ginny cried. Sure, you'll give me away. Hermione hissed. She brandished her wand. Finite incantatum. Nothing happened. Oh Godric, Hermione cursed. There were suddenly sounds of footsteps from both sides. I've never been so disappointed with someone from my own house. I found help. Both parties stopped, and Hermione, Harry and Ginny were caught in the crossfire with their flock of birds. Hello, Severus, greeted a heavily scarred, good-looking man, looking rough, and wearing a tattered traveling cloak. Lupin? Snape nodded his head, Draco hovering miserably at his side. They both turned to the carnage between them. And what, snapped Snape, is going on here? Remus gave the older man an assessing look. Surely you can tell, Severus? The other side. Of course. They spoke simultaneously. Prank war. And obviously Remus had to appear at some point. Didn't he? This chapter is dedicated to Cassie20052 for suggesting the prank war in the first place. I'm not sure I've done it justice, but I felt I needed to get a chapter out to you guys after the absence last week. Thank you for reading and please comment.
A tragic tale.
Remus took charge at once, getting rid of Hermione's birds, and sending the miserable Harry and Ginny to the hospital wing in the company of Hannah. Then Professor Snape took over. Draco, Granger, you are coming now to my office, where I shall deliberate what your punishments will be for your transgressions. He snapped. Punishments, sir? Hermione gulped. Yes, the professor replied sternly. Someone has to keep order in this school. I think I'll come along too, stated Remus. Check that the punishments are reasonable and such. Snape glared at the werewolf. You are no longer a teacher, Lupin. You can't prevent me disciplining students, especially one of my own house, and... Here he turned his killer stare on Draco, my godson. I know, Remus replied easily. We need to catch up anyway, Severus. Do we? Snape rolled his eyes. Yes, said Remus firmly. Considering Dumbledore's absence, you are the next person I wish to speak to. Why did you come all this way? Hermione questioned curiously. I'd like to discuss that in private, if you don't mind. Remus answered evenly, without looking at her. Draco shared a look with Hermione, and the group remained in silence until they reached Snape's rooms. Surely 30 points from each house is a tad severe, Severus, Remus pointed out once settled in an armchair. They didn't really cause that much damage. Draco and Hermione shifted uneasily. Severus gave the two a disdainful look and then returned his gaze to his former enemy. Draco trashed his common room. Tables upturned, parchment everywhere, ash all over the carpet. He even managed to stick wax on the ceiling. Snape's tone was of disbelief, not disappointment. Hermione eyed Draco, annoyed she hadn't known to what length he would go to cause chaos. Really? Remus sounded amused. I suppose 30 points is reasonable, then. Look, Hermione, Draco, can you leave us? We need to discuss some business. If it's order business, I want to stay, Hermione said obstinately, surprising herself with her vehemence. Me too, Draco declared. Snape rolled his eyes again. Severus? I don't see why they can't stay. They know most things anyway, Snape sighed, rubbing at his temples and sitting down opposite Remus. Really? Draco knows quite a lot about my past life as a result of me being his pathetic godfather, and Granger decided to come to me to ask about house rivalries. And so I showed her the Data OWL exam memory, Snape explained, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Oh, Severus, Remus said quietly. All right, you two can stay. Draco and Hermione looked around and awkwardly sat down on a sofa. Both Remus and Snape occupied the armchairs by the spitting, dying fire. Dumbledore let something slip the other day. Remus began lowly. There is something that can defeat Voldemort getting rid of his Horcruxes. Snape paled dramatically, but Hermione and Draco just looked at both men in confusion. What are Horcruxes? Draco asked tentatively. Remus responded, given that the potion's master was currently massaging his forehead in silence. Horcruxes are the darkest of all magic. It is when a witch or wizard commits a fragment of their soul to an object, in the hopes of attaining immortality. I don't really know much more about it. Snape spoke, though his voice was harsh. Horcruxes can be hidden in human beings as well as objects. And the ritual for making a Horcrux, the first act is murder, the supreme evil, and then there are others, terrible, terrible crimes of nature. Horcruxes are usually protected by countercharms and jinxes. If the Dark Lord has Horcruxes, those will need to be sought after and destroyed before he, too, can be killed as a mortal. Hermione shivered. I did suspect, began the potion's master, that something of this kind was what the Dark Lord was using to escape death. Then why haven't you gone to look for them? Draco exclaimed. Both Hermione and Snape drew in deep breaths. Hermione at Draco being so rude to a teacher, and Snape because it was a question he didn't want to answer. Why? Tell me. Draco was insistent. Remus tried to calm him down. Draco, Severus may not want to divulge that information. But I want to know. The raised pitch of Draco's voice caused the professor to look up with sad eyes. The answer to that is the same as the one to why do I stay at Hogwarts? He stated. So what is the answer? When I graduated from Hogwarts, I joined the Death Eaters, Snape said blandly. Hermione winced, although she was the only one that did. I worked for the Dark Lord and I worked hard. But then they started hunting down a child, a baby boy. They were searching for a baby born at the end of July. The two most famous of these were Neville Longbottom and Harry Potter, children whose parents had defied the Dark Lord thrice. Hermione gasped and Remus looked uneasy. Draco remained steadfastly stone-faced. They began searching for them because I stupidly, wrongfully overheard a prophecy told by Professor Trelawney to Dumbledore. Realizing my mistake, I hastened to Dumbledore. He agreed to protect Lily and, in turn, Harry and James, but I had to pay the price. I had to do anything the man said. And then Lily was murdered and so was James. I was ordered to protect Harry, to watch over him whilst he was taught here. I had to stay as a potions professor to teach incompetent children because I owed Dumbledore, and the ministry would arrest me if I even tried to leave. I can't go out searching for the Horcruxes, I'd be arrested on sight. And even if I wasn't arrested, the Dark Lord would kill me for betraying my master. There was a silence for a few moments. Hermione sat back, feeling faint. Remus looked troubled. Draco appeared as though he might cry, his face white with fear. As if in response, there came a knock at the door. Enter, said Snape, quiet and unflinchingly emotionless. Filius bustled in, and was unfazed to see the four of them there. Severus, it's Death Eaters. We must fight. Now.
Aen.
So Severus finally divulges everything to Draco, Hermione, and Remus. We now know why he stays at Hogwarts. But why have the Death Eaters come knocking? Find out next. In the meantime, thanks for reading and please comment. The dangers of dueling. The four of them followed Professor Flitwick without question. Although Draco and Hermione had to run to keep up with the three men who were clearly more afraid than they were letting on. As they progressed through the castle, scaling stairs to reach the ground floor, they began to hear less muffled indications of battle. Explosions of some kind rocked the castle, and every so often screams pierced the dreadful cacophony. They could only hope that those screaming were Death Eaters, not their allies. Hermione, Draco, why are you following us? Remus asked suddenly when they were about to enter the entrance hall. You can't fight, he said, staring at the two teenagers. They are of age, Severus stated, shrugging. Filius, surely Remus pleaded to the charms professor, hoping for sympathy on his part. They are both admirable duelists and, as Severus so excellently pointed out, are of age. We cannot prevent them from fighting if it is their wish to do so. Remus turned to the two sixth years. I wish to fight, said Hermione resolutely. There was a pause before Draco spoke as well. I want to help, he affirmed. At this, the five entered the massive hall. The two heads of houses immediately joined the fray. Remus stopped the two teenagers before they rushed after Flitwick and Snape. Stick together, he ordered. Defend the castle and its students. Don't get hurt and don't get killed. And with that, he was gone too. All right, said Draco, the best plan of action seems to be not to die. Hermione rolled her eyes and disarmed the nearest Death Eater. Well reasoned, she replied. You almost could have been in Ravenclaw. Nah, Draco dismissed. I'm not mad. Are you not? Hermione seemed surprised. You happen to be dating me if you hadn't noticed. So we're just as sane as each other, Draco stated. Agreed, Hermione said. To you too, Draco muttered, and raced after her. Severus was finding it surprisingly hard to keep his cool. He had to pretend to be an enemy to friends and a friend to enemies. And he was so woven into the sorry disguise he'd mockingly named his life that he almost felt as if he'd double-crossed himself. He decided to simply send erroneous hexes out and hope they didn't hit any students. Beside him, Phileas was conjuring up creative projectiles, occasionally even desks, and on his other side Remus and Minerva coexisted as an unstoppable force of destruction, with Minnie offending and Remus defending. All right, Severus? Remus asked, sending the stressed potions master a wry grin. Severus suddenly saw something flying straight towards Remus, a very large something. Lupin, look out! Hermione and Draco had been fighting back to back when Draco stopped. Hermione, look, he breathed, pointing ahead. Thankfully, their opponents were curious too and turned to look as well. Snape had literally flown, over to the desk heading for Lupin's head and obliterated it with an insanely powerful reducto. The result was so great that even a few nearby Death Eaters became dust where they stood. Blimey, exclaimed Draco. Snape landed, dusted himself off and went straight back to fighting. Shocked, Hermione quickly disarmed her and Draco's opposition before they had the chance to retaliate for previous hexes. Do you think he's redeemed himself yet? She yelled over all the banging and crashing. More than likely he returned. But then the battle took a turn for the worse. Remus, Minerva and Phileas had gone back to dueling almost as quickly as Severus, and had just finished off 3 particularly large Death Eaters when a load of smoke billowed out from a cracked flagstone. And from it emerged Lord Voldemort himself, red eyes glittering with menace and madness. Good God, Remus gasped. We're doomed. Phileas whispered partially to himself. Minerva saw Severus turn and his blanched face whiten even further. My friends, Voldemort welcomed, spreading his arms wide. So nice to see all of you. Someone shouted something and the dark wizard flared his nostrils. Silence. Why aren't you kneeling before me? At this, all of the Death Eaters, excluding Severus, and the majority of students who weren't imitating the professors kneeled before him. Minerva thought it was a trick of the light, but she could have sworn she saw Severus wrinkle his nose slightly. She, at least, had known of his fluctuating loyalties. Meanwhile, Phileas and Pomona, standing nearby, gasped in indignation. Severus made to approach his master, but then there was a sharp crack and Dumbledore appeared between his professor and his form student. Tom, he said heavily. Dumbledore, Voldemort spat. You cannot have my colleague, Tom. He is under my protection. Voldemort looked momentarily venomous and then he calmed down. Is that so, Dumbledore? Yes, it is so. Professor Snape will remain where he is. There was a hint of warning in his voice, possibly directed at Severus. Minerva thought, what if I take him from you? Forcibly. Hermione couldn't tell if Dumbledore looked nervous in any way. Snape certainly seemed conflicted over whether to go and kneel or allow the whole confrontation to happen. This is it, Draco whispered. I certainly hope so, she breathed back. As if on hearing her very words, Voldemort snarled and the duel of the century began. And yep, I know. Beneath the covers hasn't been updated for what feels like centuries. However, I still hold out hope that I can tie this off satisfactorily. Anyway, thank you for reading and please comment. Smiley face, spontaneity and surprises. Severus knew Dumbledore was doomed before he started. The Dark Lord was immortal and Dumbledore, though ancient, was not. They had very few options left, and Severus had to think of a solution before the old codger ended up lifeless. Draco was extremely hopeful about the ongoing duel. Dumbledore was strong and the only man Voldemort had ever feared. With no complicating factors, this could be the end of the Second Wizarding War and the end of Voldemort's reign of terror. Hermione, however, was on the same page as Professor Snape. Unlike Draco, she'd remembered about the Horcruxes and recognized a thoughtful face when she saw one. Draco, you do remember the Horcruxes, right? Her boyfriend visibly paled. Oh, no. Professor Snape's up to something, she commented, watching the potions master beadily. Yes, Draco agreed. He's thinking extremely hard very quickly. Well, said Hermione, he's a genius if he's got any idea how to get past this. Remus, Minerva, and Filius would all admit to having some portion of false hope within them. Minerva and Filius knew nothing about the Horcruxes, and Remus didn't have the heart to tell them. Minerva was certain Albus would win, and Filius was more dubious, given Voldemort's relative youth and equal skill. Remus simply stood and prayed to whatever deities were listening that Dumbledore would get out of this particular sticky situation unscathed. Now, Severus Snape was acknowledged to be the greatest Occlumens among his peers and almost as legendary a Legilimens, and the Dark Lord knew none of this. Severus saw a chance and he took it. Albus, Severus. Severus felt the old man's fatigue as they connected telepathically. Severus, I did it. What? Severus' shock resounded throughout Albus' mind. I did it, Severus, the headmaster repeated wearily. You know what you have to do. To all intents and purposes it looked like Snape had finally snapped. Standing near to the duelers as he was, he spun round and found his target. He aimed. Avada Kedavra, he shouted, and Harry Potter fell to the ground. Dead. Multiple cries came at once, and the duel came to an end as Voldemort fell backwards and hit his head with a resounding smack on the flagstone floor. Then Snape aimed again, this time at Voldemort, although several people squeaked and ran away from his target area. Avada Kedavra, he said again, although this time in a whisper. And Lord Voldemort, ruler of darkness and such like, died. Draco let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding after his godfather left. Hermione had immediately run over to Potter, but the boy who lived was already spluttering and blinking again. He wouldn't say he was stupid, but he had no idea what was going on and shuddered whenever he happened to look at Voldemort's pathetic corpse. Remus stood, slightly shell-shocked, next to Filius. Minerva had immediately gone over to Albus and pulled him into an uncharacteristic hug, and now they were talking together and smiling. No doubt Albus was explaining to Minerva about how Harry hadn't ended up dead and Voldemort had. Remus didn't particularly care about the technicalities. Voldemort had murdered more of his friends in cold blood than he cared to count. Now was a time for caring about the living. Minerva shook her head, disbelievingly, at Albus. You told him you destroyed all the Horcruxes and he knew instantly that he had to murder Harry? This is ridiculous, Albus. Half of me is disinclined to believe you. Sorry, Minerva, Albus said regretfully, but that's the truth. I wish it had been simpler and kinder on everyone, particularly Severus, she admonished, fixing him with a hard stare. Yes, of course, Albus swallowed. I'll go and find him now, and tell him I want a word with him, she called after him. Truth to be told, Harry felt a tiny bit sore. He just saved the entirety of the wizarding world and, frankly, he wanted everyone to pity him and then leave him be for a good 2 weeks. After all, he was just a teenager. Fame came first, then sleep. Hermione had been sympathetic at first. Then Ginny had come over and they'd started mocking him for complaining. Voldemort is dead, they said. Be grateful, they said. Harry was grateful, infinitely so, but he'd prefer it if he hadn't been involved in the first place. And Snape hadn't apologized. Harry deserved to have no potions homework for the rest of the year at the very least. How are you holding up, Harry? Remus asked, grinning, as he joined them. I'm fine, Harry grumbled. Hermione and Ginny aren't being very nice, though. I was dead for at least a minute. Hermione consulted her watch. 37 seconds. She amended. Still, he whined, I'm the hero here, so stop making fun of me. I mean, Dumbledore actually fought him, Ginny pointed out. And Severus killed both of you, Remus commented thoughtfully. Killing isn't nice, Harry exclaimed. Now, Potter, stop acting like a toddler. Snape loomed over him and the boy who lived visibly quaked in his boots. Yes, sir, he said quickly. Good. Snape seemed appeased. Dumbledore stepped into their circle. All students are to return to their common rooms straight away, he ordered. Staff. He looked at Remus and ex-staff. Please gather in my office. Harry scowled at Snape's retreating back and Hermione nudged him. He'd better not get any work from Snape for the rest of the year. Harry had died for him. He'd done his bit. For now, anyway. So, it's been a while. I have a week's holiday and thought it might be a good time to wrap this one up. This chapter is dedicated to for being an avid reader and an all-round amazing person. Hopefully some of you readers are still out there. If you are, be on watch this coming week for more chapters. Thank you for reading and please comment. Tempers and tedium. Severus would have to admit that he was extremely bored. In true immature Gryffindor fashion, Remus had actually nodded off on his shoulder and was, thankfully, only emitting very quiet snores. Hogwarts staff meetings weren't renowned for being tedious. Usually Albus welcomed them all and then Minerva took over, but today they had a surprise visit from the minister. Now, Cornelius Fudge was never a welcome presence, but on a day they just defeated Voldemort once and for all, a break from the watchful eye of the ministry would be nice for once. So you see, Fudge said earnestly, looking around at them all as he finished his monologue. Severus hadn't been tuned into a word the idiot had said, but it would be a good idea to wake Remus up before Fudge actually got offended. As a result, he quickly nudged Remus and the werewolf fell forwards. Luckily, he regained consciousness in a matter of seconds and sat back in a casual manner. Severus attempted to stifle a smirk, but Minnie saw him, and they had a short battle of who could keep themselves from snorting for the longest time. Yes, Minister, Dumbledore replied seriously, we do see. He gave his colleagues all a very stern look which, if it had been vocalized, would have been a strict admonition to behave and not act like toddlers. Now, the important part, Minnie stated purposefully. Professor Snape's Order of Merlin. Fudge looked up at Minerva's expectant face and faltered. Well, you see, Minerva, he hesitated, gazing anywhere but at Severus himself. The ministry is unwilling to, acknowledge any known Death Eaters. Ex-Death Eater, Severus growled. Who, let it be said, Remus remarked airily, killed his supposed master, otherwise known as the Lord of all Death Eaters, Voldemort. Well, the situation is a tiny bit tricky. Fudge cleared his throat, shuddering at the mention of Voldemort's name. Umbridge has tied my hands. He waved his hands for dramatic effect and only succeeded in knocking over a mug of tea which Minerva quickly sorted out. He had a furious look on his face and Fudge visibly recoiled. She is my assistant, he coughed. And she is, rather dedicated. So? Minerva questioned angrily. Umbridge is your assistant. Fire her, or I will be forced to face her myself, she threatened. She did stun you the last time you met, Severus commented, always up for starting a fight. It was 5 against 1. Sadly for Severus, no fight did break out, but Minerva didn't stop glaring at him for 10 immensely long minutes. Hermione and Draco sat by the Black Lake, holding hands. The day had been full of shocks, surprise and misery, and Hermione just wanted everything to calm down. Most of the teachers had emerged from their meeting in a bad mood, with McGonagall glaring at Snape, Snape rolling his eyes, Dumbledore sighing and Remus yawning, and Fudge had hightailed it out of the building before anyone could speak to him. Harry was busy getting the attention of a few doting Hufflepuff girls, and Ginny was painting her nails with Hermione's aquamarine nail varnish a short way off, ready to intervene when the attention-seeking became less harmless and more harmful. Ready for summer? Hermione asked, leaning against his shoulder. I'm ready for anything away from this place, he admitted. It's been a bit crazy, she commented. What with Ron and Voldemort? I bet Ronnikins is delighted that his villainy is equal to that of the Dark Lords. He grinned, looking down at her. Hermione huffed. Madame Pomfrey can't tell whether he's still got memory loss or whether he's recovered his memory and is scared to approach any of us. Probably the latter, Draco stated. The entire school hates him, it's not a secret. I would hide if I were him. Oh well. She snuggled closer to him. Tired? Hermione? Relieved? She murmured.
No Voldemort. No Ron.
Just schoolwork, Ginny completed, plopping herself next to them. Harry joined her, scowling. The Hufflepuffs had been successfully scared off by Ginny. I think he's too busy trying to get an Order of Merlin, Draco pointed out. So he might forget about homework. Forget about homework? Hermione gasped, devastated. Hermione, consider the whole picture, Ginny told her. Snape wants his Order of Merlin and he wants it first class. He's hardly going to be setting homework when he could be annoying Fudge instead. True, Hermione accepted. Anyway, what's going on? Ginny prepared herself to give a detailed account. Well, Voldemort's dead, Harry is upset that I got him away from some second-year Hufflepuffs and Dumbledore is going to arrange some sort of celebration next week. After the memorial service, of course. They were fourth years, and people are dead, Ginny reminded him. You're not giving off a great example. Has he ever? Draco muttered. Ginny glared at him. Right, okay. Dead people. Got it.
Ian.
So yeah, another chapter. I would say I'm on a roll, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Everyone's a tiny bit stir-crazy inside Hogwarts, and I've depicted Harry as a horrible person. You're welcome. Bose, thank you so much for reading. Stay tuned and please comment as always. Smiley face, in memoriam, we are gathered here today to honor and mourn the dead before us. Dumbledore intoned. Many bodies placed before him. We mourn them whether they are Death Eaters or not. We mourn them as what they either are or once were, students of Hogwarts. Each a pupil of my own. I wish to remember them all as students, for we all keep learning until the end. Some learnt, perhaps too late, that Tom Riddle was not the one they should be following. But, alas, bad things happen to all of us. They might all be good people that bad things happen to. They might have been many things, but today, they are dead, and we shall mourn them. Cunningly ambiguous, Severus commented, standing a few meters behind Dumbledore. Minerva sighed, certainly as ambiguous as ever. I hate these things. Been to many, Professor? Remus asked on her other side. I am quite old, Mr. Lupin. I have seen many friends be swallowed up by the darkness. Now that would be a better line than what Albus came up with, Severus muttered. Very poetic. Minerva elbowed him. Hush, young one. They were silent for a moment. Then Severus spoke again. I wish Umbridge were one of these, he sighed. I would reprimand you for cruelty, but in this situation I agree with you. If only the centaurs had snapped her up. I don't think the centaurs have teeth like crocodiles, Minerva. Remus pointed out, amused in spite of himself. One can only dream, Minerva commented. I certainly hope Fudge has fired the demon by now. If not, I shall pay her a visit. I didn't know you were so well-versed in blackmail, Minerva, Severus commented, amused. I am well-versed in many things. Oh, that I know. How did I do? Dumbledore asked, coming to join them. Albus, you're meant to still be standing at the front. Minerva hissed. You're the one setting an example. You three are gossiping. True, admitted Remus. We should probably stop. But are we going to? Severus asked. Enyo, you two are such children, Minerva huffed. We are 30 years younger than you after all, Severus pointed out, smiling nicely. She smacked him. You deserved it. Go and show everyone what example they should be following, Professor, Remus told her kindly. Huffing. She walked away. So, do you think she'll actually blackmail Umbridge? Remus continued, turning back to Severus. Well, I think it might depend on a number of factors. Anne and I'm back. About time, too. This is one of 6 chapters one am publishing today because, guess what? I finished the book at long last. I decided you lovely people deserve an update, and so I've given you a finished book. I hope you enjoyed this absolute madness. Smiley face, thank you for reading and, as always, please comment. Drunken ravings. Later that night, the professors were doing what they did best. Drinking. Minerva had made her way through several small bottles of nettle wine and Phileas was becoming quite giggly on his favored fire whiskey. Pomona could stomach her drink better than the others, but had still had a decent amount of mead, and Severus was attempting to drown his sorrows in a bottle of rum. Albus had appeared for half an hour to drink some of Minerva's wine, but had declined to stay longer on the dubious claims that he had end-of-year celebrations to organize. I really think, Minerva gulped, that Albus should have stayed for longer. He loves nettle wine. Almost as much as you do, Pomona muttered, sipping at her mead. Don't be crass, Pomona, Severus murmured. Don't be snide, Severus, she murmured back. It is the end of term, he pointed out, and we all have to face our students tomorrow, she said. Since when did you become the irresponsible one? Since Fudge hasn't given me my Order of Merlin. Severus crossed his arms. Ah, don't be bitter, Severus. Most of us never get one. I did kill Voldemort. Noted. Stop gossiping, you two. It looks suspicious, Minerva commented, sipping her nettle wine delicately. We do love looking suspicious, Severus said idly, relaxing back in his armchair. It's good for the health. Shut up, Severus. Suddenly there came a knock at the door and Severus rose to get it. When he opened it, however, he got a shock. Black, what are you doing here? His favorite prisoner of Azkaban stood fidgeting in the doorway. Snape, Sirius nodded nervously. You didn't answer my question. Remus appeared behind Sirius. He's here to see me, the werewolf said breathlessly. Ah, said Severus, the gears word in the potions master's head. I do love a good romance. Come in, keep calm and carry on. He turned back to his conversation with Minerva. The Transfiguration professor hadn't even noticed his temporary absence. Sirius gave Remus a nervous grin as they settled onto a sofa. Snape had surprisingly comfortable furnishings in his cramped chambers. That was uncharacteristically nice of him. Severus has been particularly uncharacteristic since killing Voldemort. I suspect he's making up for lost time. Much like you. Remus smiled at his boyfriend. Perhaps we could start afresh, started Sirius. I'm going to sell Grimmauld Place. If I can ever work out how to remove the disillusionment charm on that drat house. We can buy somewhere nice, move in together. Remus' smile grew even wider. I would love that. I would like to propose a toast, stated Severus, surprising everyone. The other professors, plus Remus and Sirius, stopped talking at once. Minerva almost dropped her wine. Dumbledore, who had returned at the promise of more nettle wine, looked curious. I know we should be remembering those who have died, and we will, but I'd like to remember two other people. Two people who started all of this, and had a hand in ending it as well. I didn't get on well with one of them, but I recognize their benefit now. He paused. Many of those present looked confused, with the absence of Dumbledore, who had a sparkle in his eye. I would like to propose a toast to Lily and James Potter. They gave birth to an irritating, bothersome boy who inadvertently saved the entire world through his temporary death. Minerva muffled a laugh. Remus held Sirius back from attacking Severus. Severus raised his glass. Lily and James Potter. The others raised their glasses. Thought I'd never see this day, Minerva muttered. Lily and James Potter, the others repeated. And cheers to Voldemort for finally dying. Bellowed some drunk attendee, probably Pomona, and they all cheered. All was well. Thank goodness.
Ein Madness Piątek 2.
The teachers get a bit drunk and Snavellis surprises everyone. Thank you for reading and please comment. Smiley face, school is out. The end of term was swiftly approaching and no one could be happier. Students and staff alike had managed to forget that Voldemort had been vanquished a scarce few weeks earlier and also the many who had died. In the hopes that a return to normal would help those who had not managed so easily to return to normalcy, Dumbledore had ordered lessons to continue as usual. This meant that the professors, who had hoped for an early summer break, returned with disappointment to their classrooms. Today, said Snape, I shall be doing what I promised your class 2 years ago. Today I shall poison one of you. A sea of apprehensive faces met his proclamation. Among the most terrified were, unsurprisingly, Harry Potter and Ronald Weasley. Draco looked amused and Hermione less than thrilled. To Severus' lack of surprise, Neville fainted dead away. Poor boy. Patil, please take Longbottom to the hospital wing. Relieved, Parvati rushed to help up a stirring Neville. She could not have been happier to miss out on this particular lesson. Actually, we're going to mix it up a bit, Snape announced. You will vote on who you want to be poisoned. Since the class contained Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, Pansy Parkinson, Vincent Crabbe, Gregory Goyle, Millicent Bulstrode, and Draco Malfoy, his own godson, Severus was very curious to know who would get the most votes. He wasn't actually going to poison them, obviously, but he had such a feared reputation that his students did genuinely think he would willingly poison one of them. And he would if he was ever allowed or needed to, but not today. Albus had said no. Regrettably, take a bit of parchment and write down who you want to be poisoned. Then I shall do a complicated little spell and the results will come up on the blackboard. Like so. Severus waited patiently as each student scribbled down a name, then waved his wand and watched as the results appeared. Curious. Very curious. Sorry, sir. What's curious? Asked a naive Harry Potter. Ron went white as a sheet. Severus was surprised he didn't make like Neville and slide to the floor in a dead faint. It would have been funnier. Congratulations, Mr. Weasley, he drawled. You're the most hated student in this class. What an achievement. This isn't fair. Ron exclaimed. It's all your fault. He pointed in Draco's vague direction. I think you'll find it was you who claimed to be my boyfriend, Hermione said, all fired up. You started this. He called you a mudblood. Like 4 years ago, people change. Severus rolled his eyes and checked the time. Incompetent brats and ingrates. I am hardly paid enough to teach you, let alone listen to this rubbish. Sort your petty squabble outside. Class dismissed. When 30 stunned faces turned to look at him, he explained. I'm also not paid enough to get away with murder. If you want to poison each other, do it yourselves. Good day.
Ein piątek 3.
Snape hasn't stooped to murder yet. Thank you for reading and please comment. Smiley face, home for the summer. It had been a wild year. From Ron's betrayal to killing Voldemort to Snape's redemption, to Snape threatening to kill Ron, Hermione had to hope Ron's actions might get him expelled, which was far worse than being killed in her book. Nearly, Hermione replied. Ginny, like most of the Weasleys, could act like an excited toddler or puppy when she wanted to. Hermione folded the final blouse into her trunk and shut the lid with a snap. Okay, done. Let on. I wish we'd graduated, Harry complained, as they walked down the many stairs to the Great Hall. Harry, this place is your home, Hermione pointed out. It's also home to Snape. Professor Snape, Hermione corrected. And Trelawney, Draco pointed out wryly. This place has its fair share of ghouls. Both real and metaphorical. Haha, very funny, Harry said. I want to become an Auror and save the world. Technically you did, Hermione commented. You died to save the world. Unintentionally, but technically you saved the world. Harry preened a little. You also don't have the grades to become an Auror, Draco said, less kindly. Perhaps turn your focuses to being a barkeep in the leaky cauldron? Or you could help Madame Rosmerta in the Three Broomsticks. Don't tempt him, said Hermione. She remembered how much Harry and Ron, but mostly Ron, had been interested in Rosmerta. Or even get a muggle job, Draco finished. You would fit right in with the amount of magic you are capable of using. I'm not a huge fan of the bullying, guys, Harry said pitifully. I got enough of that from Dudley. I'd like to think our bullying is better, Draco said. I would be annoyed if not. Oh, it is definitely better, Harry agreed. Well, worse. Brilliant, said Draco, relieved. The four walked past the Thestrals and got into a carriage. Almost I for one am more than happy to get away from Hogwarts, Draco sighed. Even Snape. He's your godfather. Hermione exclaimed. Draco shrugged. I am at perfect liberty to want a break every now and again. Fair enough. Couldn't we have opera at home? Harry wondered. If you can do it without splicing yourself, go ahead, Draco said. I'll stick with the train. Hours later, Draco and Hermione disembarked the train hand in hand. They waved goodbye to Harry and Ginny and watched as the two walked towards Molly, Arthur, Fred, George, and a scowling Ronald. I don't think I'll join the Weasleys as soon as usual this summer, Hermione said. I think I'll avoid Ron for as long as possible. A wise choice, Draco nodded. He paused. Well, you're always welcome at my house. Am I really? Hermione asked shrewdly. Voldemort's dead along with most of his followers. My dad can go back to being a ministry bigwig. A ministry bigwig with a blood prejudice, Hermione pointed out. Draco shrugged. My mum's fine with it. Dad will come round. Mum even talked about inviting Andromeda, Ted, and Nymphadora around. Baby steps, said Hermione. That's true enough, said Draco. But for them it's a lot. Hermione hummed. Well, in that case you may hear from me this summer. I hoped I was going to anyway, Draco replied with a smile. Maybe, she grinned. She saw her parents in the distance waving at her. I should go, she said. We have all summer to be together. Draco smiled at her. We have all our lives to be together, he corrected. And our lives are only just beginning. Hermione squeezed his hand. Draco laughed, and then turned away. The rest of their lives couldn't come soon enough. Thank you for reading and please comment. Smiley face, Snape versus Fudge. I wish I knew, Pomona said, sounding disappointed. I arranged to meet a friend in the Leaky Cauldron this afternoon. I'll have to reschedule. Albus will have his reasons, I'm sure, Phileas said, trying to sound dignified. But I did want some fire whiskey. You and me both, Pomona grouched. Has Minerva said anything? She was as much in the dark as we were, Severus reported. She's gone to haul Albus over the coals in advance. At least someone is on our side, Pomona said. Acid pops. The gargoyles guarding Dumbledore's office sprung to attention and moved out of the way as the three ascended the stairs. Albus, what is all this for? Pomona asked as they opened the door. I was going to pay a visit to... Pomona trailed off as she saw what awaited them. Albus did not look thrilled in the slightest. Minerva hovered in the corner, arms folded in disapproval. Sorry to delay your meeting, Pomona. I just needed to drop by and apprise you of the situation. What situation? Severus growled. Well, Cornelius faltered. I was informed by Dumbledore that he was planning on rehiring Remus Lupin as the defense against the dark arts professor for next year. That is a surprise, Pomona replied, but a welcome one. Remus Lupin is always welcome here. A sentiment we all share, Severus added with a hint of danger in his voice. Well, the thing is we thought the subject hardly needs to be called defense against the dark arts anymore. There are no more dark arts. I could be tempted to perform some dark arts right here, Severus muttered under his breath. Pomona and Phileas stifled their laughter. Secondly, we hardly feel that Remus Lupin is the right candidate for such a role, being a dark creature himself. First of all, Severus began, drawing himself to his full impressive height. Remus Lupin is no more a dark creature than I am. If you were to be bitten by a werewolf yourself, Fudge, I hope you would not want us to consign you to the slums and drag your name through the mud on account of your new unfortunate status. Lycanthropy is an illness as a result of something which cannot ever be the victim's fault. Fudge began trembling. 2. There will always be dark arts in this world. Voldemort was not the first practitioner, and nor will he be the last. Finally, I would like to know who we is. Fudge coughed. Dolores. Severus moved in a flash, and the others thought for a moment that he might have slapped the minister. Instead, he stood right in front of the seated man, looming over him. That woman gave truth serum to unwilling students, minors no less, and threatened to use the Cruciatus curse on Harry Potter, the boy who lived and unfortunately briefly died. She also sent Aurors to send Minerva McGonagall to St. Mungo's with 4 stunning spells to the heart. Boots as werewolves are. She deserves less than nothing, and she does not run this school, nor do you. Albus Dumbledore shall decide what goes on here. Good day. And, with such an unusually long speech for one such as Severus Snape, he turned on his heel and left the room, his cloak whipping behind him. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, said Minerva, but I know who I agree with. She looked at Fudge. Give the man his Order of Merlin, and make it first class for having to put up with the likes of you. Have a pleasant summer. And she too left. One by one the teachers left, until it was only Dumbledore remaining. How, why, what? Fudge spluttered. You insulted a respected member of our community, and ally yourself with a horrible, inconsiderate person, Albus explained. You have made yourself an enemy. Good day, Cornelius. I will see you at the ministry, if you stay in office for much longer. And he pushed Fudge out of the door. NPT 5 of the madness. Snape scares Fudge and the teachers walk out in outrage. Thank you for reading and please comment. Epilogue. 5 years later. Well, this is rather nice, don't you think? Minerva remarked to Severus, who was sat at her side as usual. Depends what you count as nice, Severus sneered. Too much frivolity, I feel. I wish they could turn the jollity down a notch. Oh, you spoil sport, Severus, Minerva said, a smile tugging at her lips. Let's go dance. And she dragged the protesting man to his feet and joined the dance floor. Hermione looked up at Draco with love shining in her eyes. I think today is perfect, she declared. I couldn't agree more, Draco smiled. I always thought I would get married to some idiotic girl. Probably a Slytherin, preferably a pureblood. Lavender Brown's parents once tried to get me to marry her. I remember you saying, Hermione laughed. Didn't your parents say they would eviscerate you if you ever did? Yes, they did, Draco grinned. It's good to know my parents have matured, at least a little bit. Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy were dancing a couple of feet away from them. It wasn't clear whether they were necessarily happy, but Narcissa loved to dance, and they had to keep up an appearance for the Daily Prophet reporter who was scampering around underfoot. They weren't the only ones enjoying the festivities. Sirius and Remus were dancing like they were the only two people in the world. Hermione would have thought it was their wedding, the way they were acting. She supposed Sirius had been in hiding for rather a long time and Remus wanted his boyfriend to himself. She didn't blame him. She knew the feeling as she looked up at her now husband, Draco Malfoy. The Malfoys certainly knew how to put on a show. They were in a marquee in the gardens of Malfoy Manor, since the day was sweltering and sunny, and balloons and flowers alike adorned the marquee. Fireflies flickered in the air to add to the ambience that Muggle fairy lights provided. The Grangers had insisted upon it, frightened as they were by the extent of magical interference in their darling daughter's wedding. Fortunately for them, Arthur and Molly had taken them under their wing, and so the two couples alternated between dancing and having a good natter about rubber ducks and the futility of kitchen appliances. An argument started by Molly and won by Arthur. The Weasley family took up much of the tent. Since Molly and Arthur had adopted Hermione as one of their own, not only their children, but also most of the extended family had taken the wedding as an opportunity for a jolly good day out. Auntie Muriel could be seen complaining in one corner, but everyone else was enjoying the show. Fred was with Angelina Johnson and George with Alicia Spinnet. The four were greatly enjoying dancing in time with a bludger George had enchanted minutes earlier. Percy had found some indeterminate reason not to attend and Charlie had taken the first opportunity to return to Egypt after the war had ended. But Bill was there with Fleur, and Ginny was trying to teach Harry how to dance, with little success. He really had 2 left feet. The crowning moment really of the entire day was Dumbledore. His dancing was awful. In a surprise twist no one had seen coming, he had invited his old friend Elphia's Doge and they danced in the center of the dance floor with no consideration for the bride and groom. Elphia's didn't look particularly thrilled to be there, but Dumbledore's enthusiastic foxtrot more than made up for any reluctance on Elphia's part. In the end, most of the wedding party sat and watched and laughed at Dumbledore and Doge make their way around the dance floor, sending plenty of other dancers flying. "It's been a wonderful day," Hermione breathed, looking at her husband. "That it has," Draco agreed. "There'll be a lot of agreeing in this marriage," Hermione pointed out with a grin. Draco grinned back. "Oh, I know. In fact, I'm looking forward to it. Should we leave the guests to their dancing? I think we should. Lead the way, Mrs. Malfoy. Lead the way. ANPT 6 of the madness complete." Smiley face. "Well, isn't this the end of an era? I started writing this 5 years ago and, true to my word, I did eventually finish it. It started as quite a serious Dramion fanfic and ended as a comedy spoof, but I quite like the direction it went in and hope it provided some comic relief. Thank you so much for reading. You're all legends.